Okay, we are going to get rolling. I apologize for the wait. I also apologize to our panelists for this scary situation. It was not our intention, and I appreciate your patience with us. Just in case anyone doesn't already know, I just wanted to share very quickly about what caused this event to come and be. My name's Erin. I curate a community zine and understood very little about disability, still understand very little about disability, but had the gift of interviewing Dawn for our zine, for our Lansing accessibility issue. Our interviews are normally half an hour. We talked for 3 hours. Everyone will see that Dawn has a lot to share with us, and we are all better for it. And part of that interview was just as an example, her telling us about the lack of ramp on the back of her house. She had a front ramp, and because of that, she wasn't eligible to get a back one. But if there is a fire, the way her house was set up is it could be a really dangerous situation for her. A lot of people in this community worked together. I want to shout out Fluttering Wheels over there. They have free medical supplies to anyone that would like to take anything. They connect with donors and then get those things like ramps and medical supplies straight to the folks that need them. And we were lucky enough that they reached out with a donor that had a ramp that would work really well for Dawn's house. So one moving truck, about 30 volunteers later, and a lot of yard work, and we have successfully installed that ramp at Dawn's. But we know that she is just one person in a really big city that has a lot of serious problems with accessibility. So this panel was entirely Dawn's idea that I got very excited about as a way to try to get voices of actual disabled folks into our community, into our future leaders, to try to jumpstart talking more about accessibility in our city. What needs to change? What are things that those of us who aren't disabled might not notice, but that are invaluable and essential to the people that need them? Making sure I'm not missing anything. The layout of today was we will start with this panel. It'll be about an hour. There's 16 questions or so. After that, we'll take a 15-minute intermission and then invite our political candidates on stage. We have about 6 questions for them. And at that time, we will open the floor to anyone in the audience that would like to ask any direct questions to our panel or to our candidates. We do have food in that top corner, so if that's something you would like, help yourself at any time. I also have free zines. They feature interviews from some of the folks up here and also folks that aren't here. And it shouts out a lot of local orgs. So if you're wanting to get involved about accessibility in Lansing, that could be a great place to start. If you feel compelled to continue to donate to Dawn directly, even though she has a ramp, there's still, as I'm sure we will talk about today, so much that goes into making a house truly accessible for someone. So we're continuing to fundraise for that. And then as a small add to that, there is a trans forum talking about making the city safe for trans people happening this Wednesday at 4:30, and I have flyers and information on that as well if anyone is interested. I'm going to very quickly introduce our panel, and then we will get rolling. Do you guys mind waving when I say your name so we know who we're talking? And I'm going to go down so we can see you. Okay. So first on our panel, we have Luna from A Place for Us. A Place for Us has a vision to establish an LGBTQ affirming shelter, please don't make screaming sounds, to house individuals and families when they experience a housing crisis with the explicit intent and purpose to address the chronic nature of homelessness. We will cover the gap, housing instability, with the ultimate goal of getting people housed permanently. We also have Khadija with the Tenant Resource Center. If you have been following the homeless encampments, they're a great resource to stay up to date with that because they're working directly with those residents. Then of course we have Dawn herself. Next we have Reverend Solanax. I'm sorry, I think I butchered that a little. They are here with Weavers of the Web and Keys to Manifestation. a queer-led disability-informed pagan community and metaphysical shop in Lansing, offering free and low-cost rituals, classes, and mutual aid connections. Their current work features on a sliding scale education, community care, and practical tools for empowerment and resilience through a magical lens. Long-term, they're gathering resources for a fully accessible temple and gathering place, so reach out to them if you would like to be involved. We also have Amanda Panda and Cynthia and Keith Burton speaking from their lived experiences generously today, and our moderator is Bill. So thank you so much for everyone that came.
Well, she handed me the microphone. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with it at the moment.
Bill, if you wanted to ask the first question, we can get rolling.
All right, I'm going to start out with the first question. Remember, we have 5 minutes per question. So, not per response, per question, guys.
Mic too.
Oh, you really need to mic me? Okay, I guess. All right, first question. How do you define disability?
Disability is really a mismatch between a person and their environment. Most disabilities will disappear with a proper environment. It doesn't have to interfere with living a fulfilled life.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to kind of spring off of what she said. Obviously, the sort of legal definition of a disability is that it's something, a physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory difference that affects your ability to do day-to-day activities of living, participate in society, et cetera, et cetera. There's 2 models of disability that people talk about. One is the medical model, which most of us are probably familiar with, which says that disability is an individual problem. My disability is my problem for me to solve. And that the reason I can't do things is because I'm disabled. Then there's the social model of disability, and that basically says, as Solonex did, that we're more disabled by our environment and our society, by lack of access, lack of services and supports, ableism we encounter, than our actual disability. And like for myself, I have made my home as much as I can do it with the resources I have to be functional for me. When I leave my home, that's a totally different story. I'm much more disabled outside of my home because my community is not very accessible. Anybody else? Oh, cool.
I'm just going to add to that there's absolutely no way that I could work a full-time job as it is defined in our modern society. I am 100% disabled. However, I am able to run my own business because I design the way I work it.
Maybe I'll finish this one up and just say, you don't know when you will be part of the disabled community. So you don't know in the next hour, you don't know in the next day, and you don't know at any age.
But I'm shoving my wheelchairs now.
Well, you'll have a lot of people who can give you advice.
Any other responses to that question, guys and gals? I don't want to cut anybody off. All right, next question. Do you feel that Lansing, in general, is a disability-friendly city?
I have no issues.
No. Lansing is not a disability-friendly city. The sidewalks are not accessible to wheelchair users. Buildings are not accessible to wheelchair users. People who staff institutions are uneducated, uninformed, and frankly, offensive in the way that they interact with me when I leave my home.
I guess I'm going to build on that I also agree, no, Lansing isn't very disability friendly. That's not just to knock Lansing, because that's pretty much the truth all over the U.S., despite us having a 35-year-old civil rights law that's supposed to address that. As Amanda Panda said, infrastructure in Lansing sucks. The sidewalks are impassable in places, they're dangerous. There is a lack of audible pedestrian signals, which is dangerous for anybody who's blind or visually impaired. The businesses, government offices often are not very accessible. The housing is horrible. And I know that we've been talking in this community about homelessness for quite a while. So just real quick, some statistics, things for you to think about. Nationwide, 50% of homeless people have a disability. They're not homeless because they're disabled. They're homeless because their community lacks accessible housing and the supports and services they need to obtain and keep housing. In this community, there's almost no wheelchair functional housing. Approximately, in Ingham County, 15% of people have some kind of mobility disability. Doesn't mean they use a wheelchair, but maybe they use a walker or they're unsteady on their feet. They could benefit from the same things that make housing wheelchair accessible. However, nationwide, only 1% of housing is wheelchair accessible. And with the age of our housing stock in Lansing, I'm guessing it's less than that. So when you see people with wheelchairs and walkers, homeless people with mobility devices on the street, in the homeless camps, they're there because they have no place else to go. There isn't accessible housing. It doesn't matter how much money you have, it just doesn't exist. And our shelters are not accessible. And part of the reason is because they're all faith-based, and churches fought very hard to be exempt from the Americans with Disabilities Act. So they don't have to be accessible. They can and do discriminate against all kinds of people with all kinds of disabilities. So that's not a good thing. It's something Lansing could do better. And just at the city government level, the city has always been out of compliance with the ADA. It's like, I'm still wanting to know who our ADA coordinator is, who is supposed to monitor ADA compliance and serve as somebody who is a liaison between the public and the city. That is mandated for any city with 50 or more employees. We should have a transition plan that shows what needs to be fixed, how we're going to get there, time frame. We don't have that. Emergency management, the city of Lansing doesn't seem to interface with disabled people for emergencies, and I've been through 2 sort of natural emergencies in Lansing when I lived on the east side, and pretty much the city just like abandoned those of us who were disabled. And that's normal. Nationwide, in cases of emergencies or things like hurricanes, natural disasters, the people who die are senior citizens and disabled people who can't evacuate. That's what happens. So those are all things I would really like to see, the city address. Anybody else?
I think you summed it.
Any other responses to that question? What would a truly accessible city look like to you?
I guess I'll start because I have the mic. Well, an accessible city. Like my dream city obviously would have accessible infrastructure. It would have accessible sidewalks, and whether you walk, bike, roll in a wheelchair, you would be able to get around your city and function. There'd be adequate, accessible housing. There'd be city government that's responsive to disabled people, that reaches out to us and checks to see if our needs are being met. There would be an active disability rights organization that interfaces with the community and with the city and gets things done. Other cities have some great organizations. Access Living in Chicago comes to mind. They have successfully sued the city of Chicago twice now for ADA violations about their sidewalks and curb cuts. Yay, Chicago. We don't really have anything like that here. And services in general, I think other people on the panel would say, are very fragmented and hard to access. Even if you know a lot and know a lot of people, it's difficult. So my ideal city would take care of that.
I think for me, like with what I deal with, we could really use a lot more mental health infrastructure, which we're slowly getting in this city, thankfully, but it's still like, I don't know if it's going to be enough, and I'm worried about potential conditions. I've been into St. Lawrence plenty of times and have had issues there, and I'm worried that those issues will carry over to a new hospital even if we get this new place. But I'm still hopeful, because right now, like when I have a mental health crisis, I literally go all the way to Grand Rapids to get help, because it's not safe for me to seek help in this city. Like, you can get sent to any hospital in the state or even out of the state if you go through an ER or crisis services over at CMH, and having a hospital that I can direct admit to would be a very big thing for accessibility for mental health here for me, so I don't have to go all the way to Grand Rapids anytime there's a crisis. But like I said, we're seeing some of that be built up, hopefully, well, and CMH is having their new crisis stabilization unit, which could be a big thing too, but I've told CMH in the consumer advisory councils that I'm on, that if they just carry over the same way they're doing things now to this new facility, nothing's going to change, and that's, we need to see structural change just all around in the mental health sector. That's all I can really speak on.
One way to think of making the city better would be coming from my grandchild that said, if we just showed everybody kindness, then we'd get it right for those that have differing abilities.
I'm not going to give you a laundry list of accessibility devices and strategies and whatnot, but I'm going to tell you what you would see in a truly accessible city, and that is you would see disabled people out and about in the city. You'd see them in the grocery stores, you'd see them in the shopping mall, you'd see them going to the ballpark, you'd see them in the park, all the parks. You'd see them going down the side of the road. And it wouldn't be a situation like happened to one of my kids who was just walking to work, but oh my God, somebody saw a blind person walking down the side of the road and called the cops on him. Because it's that unusual. Y'all don't see disabled people, and this is the product of 200 years of society trying to get disabled people off the streets so that we don't have to look at them. They are more than you realize. And the reason that you don't see them is because they're stuck.
Any other responses to that question, folks? Next question. What is something about disability that you wish more people understood?
Can't say the word.
So he's going to take some time, and when you said that we have 5 minutes, it's really quieted him down. He takes time to speak and to think his thoughts. And so I understand that he can't think of it right now, and that's why I keep adding in, trying to encourage him. Thank you for your patience.
It also takes me time to think of my words. I have a traumatic brain injury, and something that I wish that people understood about disability is that it's not always visible. I have physical disabilities also, but I have invisible disabilities, and those are often not considered, especially in terms of sensory needs. There's not a lot of places that I can go and function just because of the lighting or because too many people are talking at once. So there's a lot of things that we can do just as people to make the city more accessible and to be more understanding of people with disabilities.
Yeah, speaking on the invisible disabilities, within the developmental disability context, I've been with CMH for over a decade now, and a good majority of that I was on their developmental disability side, and so much of services and supports is purely based on your IQ score, it feels like. And I think it's important people know that within the developmental disability context, that your IQ has nothing to do with your level of support or needs.
I would just like to add on that not all physical and invisible disabilities necessarily manifest them in the ways that you would imagine. I am someone that has invisible disabilities that affect me physically, and I also have severe mental health struggles that I've had all my life. They've been around since I was a child, and despite what I'm able to do, that doesn't mean that I am less deserving or less in need of just as intense support as some of my counterparts here on stage. And so I just wanted to take the time to highlight that too, in that it almost feels like functioning can be like a type of masking. And so I just wanted to speak at least to that. Thank you.
I guess there's so many things I could say, but one of the things I really come across a lot of times is that people have an idea that disability is all or nothing. You're either 100% disabled and you're helpless, you can't do anything. Why are you out on your own? Like, Solonox, I know you can attest to that. It's like, when I was more mobile and got out more, people would just come up to me and assume like I was lost or in need of help because I'm in a wheelchair by myself. And it's like, a lot of us can do things ourselves. And no, we don't get 24/7 caregivers when we are approved for disability. It's really hard to get the supports we need. But disability is not an all or nothing thing. And for a lot of us, disabilities are dynamic. That means they change from day to day, sometimes from hour to hour. I mean, I have had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis since I was a baby. I still get blindsided by my RA. I wake up in the morning, and this is kind of funny, but if my cats are all laying against me, against my joints, I know I'm going to have a hard time getting out of bed because I'm flaring, and they can tell. And some days I wake up, I'm like, I feel fine, I'm going to do things. By afternoon, it's like, I am so sore and exhausted because being in pain 24/7 is exhausting physically and mentally. I'm like, I got to take a nap. So it's very unpredictable. I think there's also a lot of misconceptions about the Americans with Disabilities Act. People think that it's a one and done, it fixed everything and that it's just about buildings. And it's like, it was never meant to be one and done. It's supposed to be like a living thing that as times change, we update it. Also, it's not just about infrastructure or being able to make phone calls. It is a major civil rights law. And it was, when it was signed in 1990 by Bush, his speech talks a lot about how this is a huge civil rights law. And I think people really need to think about that. Because people tend to think, well, if you're disabled, that's a you problem. They don't look at it as like not getting in, being able to get into a building. People will be like, well, just go somewhere else. Why should I go somewhere else? I have the same rights to enjoy this community as everybody else, people who walk, you know, that my civil rights are violated every time I can't get into a building, every time I can't access health care, every time I can't access education or whatever, or find housing. That's a civil rights violation. And I wish people would think of it that way, because if you did the same things to other marginalized groups that you do to disabled people, people would be on the streets. If a business put up a sign saying, you know, we don't serve black people, we don't serve gay people, people would be furious. If a business doesn't have an accessible entrance, nobody cares. Well, you've just put up a sign that says no cripples allowed. We don't want you here. So that's my big takeaway, is that I really want people to understand the ADA didn't solve things for disabled people. It's a start, and it's a civil rights law. It's not just about a ramp or an automatic door.
Hey, Dawn, how much did your wheelchair cost?
How much, this one?
Yeah.
I've had this one for like 7 years. I had to use my tax refund. Thank you, homestead property tax refund, to buy it, because I'm not allowed to save money. I think at the time, because this is their deluxe slim model, it was about $2,600 out of pocket. It's not covered by insurance because it's portable, which means it's not primarily for use in the home. Medicare doesn't cover wheelchairs if they're not for use in the home.
Yeah, by the way, disability coverage policies assume that you never leave the house if you're disabled, if you didn't know
Yep,
that.
and they don't care if you do.
Amanda, how much did your wheelchair cost?
I got mine used from a friend for $1,500, but new it's $3,000.
Yeah. Nobody's paying for that.
Manual ones are more expensive.
Nobody is buying the canes that my children use to get around. Nobody's buying the walkers and the wheelchairs. Nobody's buying my mobility aids. Anything that you can get covered is going to be substandard and only good enough if you're lucky to get you around the house, and maybe not even that good. There are not the resources out there that you think there are. And to the extent it is so bad that my aunt, who is a licensed and practicing teacher consultant for the visually impaired in Louisiana, when I was trying to find resources to get a Braille printer for my son, sent me a huge list of resources like she was trying to help. All of it was dead links and dead programs. I've tried to reach out to the Lions Club. I've been trying to get my son a Mountbatten Brailler for over 10 years, right? I reached out to the Lions Club. They don't do that. Did you think they did that? They don't do that. There are not the resources out there that you think there are.
Next question. Can you speak to the social isolation? Can you speak to the social isolation that can come with a disability?
I used to be more abled. I used to work a full-time job and be a single parent, and I had all kinds of friends from work and just from being out in the community. When I became more disabled, when I got my traumatic brain injury and my physical health started to decline, at first my friends were there. I guess it's cool to be disabled for a little while. But as time went on, more and more of them fell away, didn't contact me anymore, didn't respond to my messages anymore, didn't invite me to things anymore, didn't show up to help anymore. And so now I have an entirely new group of friends, of people who are disabled.
I mean, I try to get out in the community when I can and when I'm able, but there's honestly a lot of weeks where the only people I see outside of my housemates are my therapist and a support worker, and lately I haven't even had the support worker because of lapse of coverage. And yeah, it's very isolating, and I don't know, like, part of like my mental illness is like I just isolate, and it's very difficult because I want to get out in the community, but it's just too overwhelming at times.
I'm going to comment from the other side of it, in that, like, because I'm able to engage in my work, it's extremely public facing, and I find it wildly overwhelming, just the constant amount of like touch points and things like that. And I always have like the feeling that I'm not necessarily allowed to like just like have those moments where I am like, I need to like, I'm really depressed, and so I would like to sleep and rest my body, or like in a chronic fatigue flare up, I need to rest, or like my body will shut down on me, and it doesn't necessarily feel like there's like space for that to happen. And then like trying to like turn to a community and like be vulnerable in that moment is not necessarily met with maybe like the kind of care that I'm hoping that it would be met with. It always seems like they're surprised, you know, and so it's it can be exhausting in that way, in that I would like to engage in some level of isolation, but I'm just not able to.
And I'm just going to jump off of something Solnak said about they don't care about whether or not, like with wheelchairs and stuff, if you can get out. And that is literally, that is the way it is. Most insurances follow Medicare. Medicare says if you don't need it primarily for use in your house, we ain't paying for it. Which makes it difficult if you need some kind of mobility device to get out in the community. But even if, like me, I use mine 24/7 now, I would be bedbound without my wheelchair. That's like basically what it is. I can stand up, and I can walk a couple of steps if I have something sturdy to lean on, so I can transfer, but I'm not walking anywhere. And when I go out in the community, it's like I can't get through the sidewalks. Sometimes the curb cuts are bad. One time I lived on the east side on Francis. I think some of you probably know where that is. I was trying to, with my son, roll down the street to Allen Market, and on the way back, we took Michigan Avenue. And I was crossing with the light, crossing a side street, got to the other side, and guess what? The curb cut was messed up. So here I am, the lights turned. I had to roll down Michigan Avenue between parked cars and traffic on Michigan Avenue downtown. Cattle came up behind me. I thought for sure I was going to die. I eventually found like a driveway I could get up. But yeah, it's very isolating when you can't get out. And as Amanda said, people stop coming. Like your friends, they think you're going to get better. It's like, I'm sorry, but this is a chronic progressive condition. I'm never getting better. And I'm over 60 years old. Like, I'm at the age where most people are starting to have issues with their knees or their hearing or whatever. So it's like, I'm definitely not getting better at this point. I'm planning for a future of like being less mobile than I am now. And our society generally wants to put people like me in facilities. And once you're in a facility, it's like you are gone. Like, you lose your autonomy, you lose rights, and a lot of them are not very nice. The reason we have any laws at all overseeing them is because they were so abusive. And if you want to see a good documentary about how bad they could be, watch Willowbrook. It's an expose documentary where Geraldo Rivera went into this facility, and I will warn you, it's horrifying. But yeah, and we see that, that isolation, that wanting to institutionalize people is being pushed again. I mean, look at what Trump wants to do with homeless people. Basically, it's like, well, put them in institutions, put them out of sight, out of mind. And it's like, that's very concerning to me. This country has had how many people have heard of the ugly laws? Anybody? Yeah, a couple. So most people don't know disability history. In this country, we had what were called ugly laws, which meant that if you were disfigured or disabled, it was illegal to be in public. The last ugly law was repealed in 1974 in Chicago. I was 11 years old.
1974.
Yeah. So, people like me who've grown up disabled, especially pre-ADA, pre-Section 504, we remember those things. It's not just history to us. We lived it. I've met plenty of people my age or older who grew up in facilities. And imagine being a child in a nursing home or a psychiatric facility with adults. So it's it is isolating being disabled because at the root of it, our society just doesn't want to see us. And that is something that I hope we can change. But it takes effort. It takes what the late, great William Bad Cripple Peace called the social mandate. And that's what, if you're not disabled, that is what you can do, is help create a social mandate for change.
I know after one of my strokes, I was not able to hear, and that was pretty rough. I could not hear nothing, and they made me learn how to point at the board with things that I couldn't say, but I could point at them so they knew what I was talking about. That's one of the times I come back from the hospital. I had to start therapy instantly, and it was pretty rough. And other than therapists, when she came over, we didn't see anybody for a while. I don't even think we saw the kids much then. So yeah, it's pretty rough being isolated when you can't do what you're used to, or try what you used to.
It also really affected his mental and his ability to bring back his speak and his hearing, to not have people around. So if he's left a couple hours by himself, he can lose his speech more, and it doubles in as a problem. So therapy is very important in all walks.
I broke it? I touched it too much? Is that it? Don't touch it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, talk about social isolation. And it's the one thing, sorry, it's the one thing that, I mean, I have mixed feelings about legislation and regulations and whatnot, but legislation, regulations, and laws will never do the job of fixing the social isolation, even once we fix physical, technical accessibility, because a lot of social isolation is just y'all's discomfort with seeing us. And it's a big part of why I run my organizations, my space, the way that I do. Nobody will ever be excluded from my space because of wearing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, or doing the wrong thing. I don't care how you smell, I don't care how you groomed, I don't care what your fashion sense is. I don't care if you know the right words or not. I don't care what your manners are. As long as you are not actively seeking to harm somebody else around you, you're welcome in my circles. Because too many of us have spent our entire lives not being invited to parties, not being included in events, getting fired from jobs without knowing why, getting kicked out of groups without understanding why. And that is the one thing that we all have in our power to stop right now.
Next question. Our government is actively attacking the disabled community. Do you see this current administration as the beginning of the end of the ADA?
I don't really think I could call it the beginning of the end because it's been slowly being chipped away at since its inception. Like, this is just an acceleration of that process. But they've been attacking the ADA since day one.
To add on to that, I feel like this administration is kind of speeding things up. But when it comes right down to it, it's both. It's been every administration. It's Democrats and Republicans both. It's all about, a lot of times, about what the business classes want, what the people with money want. And so they're constantly wanting to chip away at the ADA and make it weaker. And the ADA already, the only enforcement that mechanism for the ADA is lawsuits. You can either find an attorney that specializes in ADA lawsuits, or you can file like a complaint with the Department of Justice. People have this perception, it's discrimination, so that means you can sue and get big money. Well, first of all, it's hard to sue. Secondly, unless you live in a handful of states that have their own state laws that allow for personal damages, the ADA does not have personal damages. Like, no matter how badly I'm discriminated against, I don't get personal damages if there's a lawsuit. The defendant, say the city of Lansing, would have to pay the court costs and they would have to fix things. But there's no money in it for me or other disabled people to sue. Like, that's the only way to get our rights. And both Democrats and Republicans have tried to chip away at that and change that for years. I think if they think they're going to totally get rid of the ADA, they haven't thought about the disability community, because there are some really hardcore activists in the disability community. That's how we got rules signed for Section 504. That's how we got accessible buses. That's how we got the ADA, because 1,000 people showed up at the steps of the Capitol and people threw down their crutches, got out of their wheelchairs, and climbed those steps to shame Congress into passing that law. If you have Medicaid, or you have a plan through the ACA, or you have a pre-existing condition and are still able to get insurance, you need to thank the disability community for that, because in Trump's first term, they were going to cut they were going to get rid of the ACA. They were going to cut Medicaid and Medicare. disabled activists showed up en masse and took over the halls of Congress. They didn't just performatively picket, they went to Congress intending to get arrested. They blocked the hallways, they had sit-ins, they had a die-in in Mitch McConnell's office, and that got results. So like, yeah, we are not a community that is gonna sit and let our rights be taken away. So I don't think the ADA is gonna like just go away, but we do have to be vigilant about them chipping away at it constantly.
Beyond the ADA, when I think about this administration and how they're affecting the disability community, I think about how they're talking about autistic people. It's horrifying, it's degrading, and it's disgusting. Do I think it's the beginning of the end? I don't know.
The ADA is a lot of why I don't have a lot of faith in laws and regulations. It's not worth the paper it was printed on. It doesn't do anything.
Any other responses to that question? All right, moving along. How has internalized ableism affected you? What has unpacking that ableism meant to you?
Nobody else is going to go on this one? Okay.
So I can speak to how I'm feeling right now because my experience has been, as I described, different from what you've heard on the panel, and I have struggled since I received the invitation with the idea of being up here because I knew that, well, it would be different. My experience has been different with my disabilities. They're not visible, and so they also are not necessarily manifesting in a way that is the way that we typically talk about the disability conversation. I shouldn't feel uncomfortable sitting up here talking with you all about our shared experience just because it has come across differently than a lot of folks. I am surrounded by people, but I feel lonely because I cannot get away when I need to, and that doesn't make my experience with social isolation any different. We're just like experiencing disability in a parallel way, and I always feel uncomfortable trying to engage in this conversation because it is so different, and so I feel like I, in a way, like sharing my experience can almost undermine the folks around me because I am coming at it from just a different perspective in the way that I am engaging like with the topic in my own life. And so that's how it shows up in me, in that it's like this kind of quiet denial of my own experience and not wanting to necessarily share or be as open about it. You know, I have multiple heart conditions. I have lived with mobility issues. I was 27 thinking I would never walk again with 2 children under 2, and my support system disappeared, my family disappeared, right? But I'm walking again now. And so it feels uncomfortable to discuss like what that was even like and how it's impacting the way that my disabilities show up now and how I'm engaging with it. And so the ableism is keeping me from engaging in the conversation, and I can only assume that there are definitely other people experiencing their disabilities similarly to me who feel equally uncomfortable engaging in the conversation just because it just, and also like I think and I'm recognizing it now, which I think is maybe a testament to the fact that like being aware of your mental health issues does not equal like a real-time change, I guess, in how like you engage with it, because like hearing myself talk right now, I can hear that it's my anxiety speaking, so yeah.
Yeah, I think we all, to some extent, have internalized ableism, just like we have internalized racism. I mean, we live in a society where we're swimming in ableism, and you really have to, like, it's a lifelong job to examine that and unpack it. I was born well before there were laws. I grew up not having rights as a disabled person. I didn't have the right to access society. I didn't have a legal right to go to school. I didn't have a legal right to have a job. And one of the things I did growing up and even well into adulthood is, as much as possible, I would hide the extent of my physical disabilities. And as I was walking, that was easier to do, and I was young, because people look at a young person and it contradicts their idea of disability. They can't imagine, say, a teenager being young, being disabled. So I could more or less often pass as not disabled. I've done a lot of work with myself to like be loud, proud, disabled person I am. And if that makes people uncomfortable, that's their problem. It's not my problem. I'm not going to let them make it my problem. But it's been a long time getting to that. I also, when I was younger, and I'm not the only one I know who's done this, who's been like, yeah, it sucks not being able to walk, but at least my brain works, or at least, I don't have an intellectual disability or whatever. And it's like, that's ableism. And sadly, we call that horizontal ableism in the disability community, when we're like ableist against other disabled people. There's actually a hierarchy where you've got like physically disabled people are like, well, at least I'm not, don't have Down syndrome or whatever. Then and then within that you also have like, well, at least I don't use a wheelchair. Then you have the people who use wheelchairs. Well, at least I'm not a quadriplegic. And it's like, no, we're all disabled. We need to unpack all of that ableism, because we need to like work together to fight ableism. If we create the same hierarchies within our disability community as exists in the non-disabled community, we're just replicating that same system of oppression. And so that, to me, is another reason why it's really important to examine our own ableism. And also because it just prevents us from reaching out and getting supports and services and things that we need.
I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to say that your experience is valid, and I'm glad that you're here.
Feel better.
So my husband can get up, and he uses a wheelchair a lot also, one in the home, a manual, as well as he has an electric one down there. And so it's all a matter of what he will accept to be able to be used for any given time. He's used lots of different aids, but it is part of something that not only society teaches us, but people really feel even now about using a walker or a wheelchair or anything that helps them, and that we don't find that as use it for 10 minutes and then don't, or use it as you need it, and that's okay. It's like, well, why are you having to lean on that?
There was a time when I used nothing but crutches every day for 2 years because I didn't have a leg that fit so I couldn't even really use it at all. So it took me 2 years at least before I finally got a foot made by a different company to work, and I haven't used them. I used them in the morning at all since. I only use the wheelchair to get when I get up, and when I go down to get dressed, I put on my leg, and I never put them on. I haven't used crutches in probably 2 years now.
I just wanted to talk kind of my experience with internalized ableism has a lot to do with my mental illness and like just what I've been through. I've been hospitalized for an inpatient psychiatric setting over 40 times. I've gotten electroconvulsive therapy. I've been through the system about as deep as it goes on the mental health side, it feels like, and I still have a lot of internalized ableism about it though when I look at myself, and it causes me to like second guess everything I'm doing a lot, because every time something horrific happens on TV, what do they blame? They blame mental health, they blame mental illness, regardless, before they even find out who did it or what their motivation is. Mental health is the first thing to get blamed. And now they're adding being transgender to that list. And it just causes a lot of internal conflict, just causing me to second guess what I'm doing at all times. Like, I know I'm mentally ill. I'm that mentally unstable person that they want to point to. They want to claim that I'm just trans because I'm crazy. And it's rough at times, and it sucks not knowing whether what I'm doing is because I'm passionate or because I'm crazy. And like that's what I have to ask myself a lot, and it sucks, and it just worsens the depression, honestly, and makes all the mental health issues worse.
Speaking of mental health issues, the way that internalized ableism affected me the most, I think, is when I became more disabled and I had to grieve what I lost, in terms of ability, in terms of levels of pain, in terms of community. There's just a lot of grief that comes with that. And as we know, grief is not a thing that happens and then it's over. It's something that cycles. So for me, internalized ableism mostly shows up as grief.
It looks like y'all can't see my heart racing up here as I am constantly second guessing every move that I make and the way that I'm sitting and what y'all think of my own adaptive devices, because they don't look like adaptive devices, but it's what I need to function. You know, and it looks like my husband, falling off a brick wall at night because he insisted on walking through campus without a cane because he didn't want to look blind for so long, right? It looks like not giving myself the same grace that I try to give other people.
For me as a caregiver, it's that I can still be proud of him and still think he's so amazing, even when you see the little things that might embarrass you. We have family, and sometimes they can get embarrassed. But that's what we have to make normal, that it's okay. That it's okay for him to be happy because he remembers when he couldn't do a lot of things and couldn't hold a fork and couldn't control things. And so now he can, and he did it. And so it's a good thing. And when he shares that, a lot of wives would be embarrassed. It's not what society says is okay to do. It's not how it works and where the places are. We're here in a comfortable zone, but is meetings, is other places comfortable with hearing that real truth? Can they let us speak? Can they let him be? And that's the difference that we've got to create so that we're all able to hear and listen.
All right, guys. Last question. What does bodily autonomy mean and look like to you?
I guess for me, it's about my ability to advocate for myself and like make my own decisions. And there's times in the mental health system where you don't have that choice, but you still got to advocate for yourself the best you can. Yeah, it's about being involved in the process of your own journey, I guess.
I guess I would say, first of all, bodily autonomy obviously is like me being able to make decisions about my care, who helps me, who touches me, how they do that. That's a big one. And also just being able to have boundaries and not set boundaries, firm ones, and not feel bad about it when people get like annoyed. So if someone grabs my wheelchair when I'm out in public and tries to move me, which you would never, it's happened so much. I used to try and be polite, and I'm not anymore, because it's like, you would not do that to someone who wasn't visibly disabled. Why do you think you can touch me without my permission? Why do you think you can move me like I'm an object? I'm a person. So I will confront people, because I feel like those are boundaries that I can set. I can't control other people, but I can let them know that, you know, this is not acceptable to me. I have the right to refuse this. And typically disabled people in our society have not been given autonomy. We're experimented on, we're locked up, we are involuntarily sterilized, that still happens. We are forced to have abortions when we don't want them, that still happens. A lot of things like that. And the other thing is just part of autonomy I don't think people think about is that I feel like we have the right to our stories. There's something that disability activists say, nothing about us without us. We have the right to tell our stories the way we want to tell them, and not have people appropriate those stories to make their own point. And generally, when that happens, it's able-bodied people using us as inspiration porn or something that's acted on and as part of charity. It's not, and so we have the right to tell our stories from our viewpoint and our disabled lens. That's part of, to me, is part of autonomy. And finally, not being forced into institutionalized care. We have a system that's very heavily built towards forcing people into institutionalized care, whether it's a nursing home or AFC, whether it's a group home, whether it's a psychiatric facility. Like, our system is actually built up and the funding favors like institutionalization. There are programs. I'm on a Medicaid program specifically to keep people out of nursing homes. I still medically qualify for a nursing home, which I know people look at me and don't think that I belong in a nursing home. I don't either. But there's a lot of people who would say, well, you can't prepare your own meals. You can't leave your house without help. Why aren't you in a nursing home? Why aren't you in an AFC? We have the right to live in the community. We fought very hard for that. The Supreme Court has said that people with disabilities have the right to receive care in the place of their choice in the least restrictive environment. And so part of autonomy is being able to choose where we live, how we live, to make those kinds of choices. If people are making choices for us, we don't really have autonomy.
I'll just tell a couple anecdotes about people touching me in public when they were not invited to. One time I went to Everybody Reads, and I was with my family, including my child, and there's a little lip to get into the building, and my wheelchair couldn't get over the lip. So what would normally happen is that my family member would help me navigate that, and then I would be inside the facility. But what happened instead is someone who was shopping saw us at the door. It was a man, and he came out and lifted up my entire wheelchair with me in it and carried me in. And I was so shocked that I didn't say anything. I just lost my words, and he was like, "You're welcome." And people think that it's okay, that because I'm using a wheelchair, they treat me like a suitcase. Another story happened in the airport. I have so many airport stories. What I do is I gate check my chair so I can have it throughout the airport, and then when I get to the airplane, I can board with assistance. And then when I get off the airplane, my chair is there waiting for me, in theory. But what happens actually is that, oh, they're in a hurry, so they sent it to baggage claim, and I can go get it at baggage claim. How am I supposed to get to baggage claim? I have crawled through airports because my chair wasn't there, because somebody else took my chair, who knows where. It's not where it's supposed to be by law. When you gate check your chair, it should be there when you get off the plane. And I'm not polite either.
Bodily autonomy also applies to our children, and it's something that a lot of parents of disabled children I don't think about. I put a cane in my youngest's hand when he was 9 months old, before he could even walk. And it was just a little 2-footer thing, just so that he could reach out and explore the environment just the way another kid would with their eyeballs. And I can't imagine how it is growing up with mobility issues, but it is the thing that pisses me off the most about the blind community is the way sighted parents in particular, blind parents obviously don't do this, but sighted parents will lead their child around by the hand and will make sure that they never have an opportunity to fall down or get lost or, run across the yard, play ball. Bodily autonomy means letting kids be kids even if they have medical issues. It means when somebody turns 21, let them have a frickin' drink, and I don't care how developmentally disabled they are. That means they get to have sex too, sorry. It means they get to have fulfilled lives.
Disabled people have sex, did you know?
Woo!
All right, beautiful people, we are going to start the second segment with our candidate interviews. They have elected to use the same format as the group before, so they will have 6 minutes as a group to answer these questions. So, you can casually file in if you'd like, but we are going to get started. Thank you so much.
I guess I'm starting first. My name's Eric Almquist. I'm running for Ward 2, and I'm here to listen as much as I am to talk, and I prefer listening.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heath Lowry. I'm the candidate, or a candidate, for the 4th Ward.
Hey everybody, I'm Julie Vandenboom. I am running for City Council at large. I am one of 4 people that are running for 2 seats.
Hello, I'm Kelsey Hector. I'm running for mayor against Andy Shore. I will be eating pizza because I'm starving, and there was definitely I get chatty in breaks, so thank y'all for having me.
All right, to get started here. First question. Remember, you have 6 minutes collaboratively to answer this question between all of you, and I will let you know when that 6 minutes is up. What steps will you take to hire an ADA coordinator?
I've actually heard about this on doors, talking to Dawn as I was knocking her door. I think this is something that our city sorely needs. Unfortunately, that the power to hire is vested entirely into the mayoral position currently under our current charter. That could always change with the charter commission, but right now that's not what we're seeing. So the city council could investigate or call in HR to make sure that something like this is hired. They can't direct it, but we can at least make it public that these things are not being paid attention to.
I would just hire someone. It's that simple. Not only do we need audits in different departments and stuff, but including the economic and the budgetary audits, we also need someone to look at accessibility and inclusion within all the departments in our city, period. And so hiring someone to do that job is of the utmost importance. And I'm pretty sure the mayor's salary is big enough that we could take a chunk of that to pay someone to do that full time.
Speaking of money, we have money set aside for other positions that we haven't hired in many years. Just move some of that money over. No harm, no foul, easy fix. We can get this done, but boy, is it important. Every time we do a construction project, we get farther behind in taking care of this. Washington Square is going to be torn up where you can't even go on the sidewalks. This is a perfect time to fix everything, and we need to move quick and get this done because that happens in the spring. We got to plan for it, but this is doable.
Any other responses to that question, folks? Next question. What is Lansing's ADA transition plan?
All right, this is a good one because Eric reached out to me a couple days ago. Kelsey reached out to me. We were all sitting at home doing our homework, using the Google to figure out what is Lansing's ADA transition plan. And we got here and learned that, yes, this was indeed a trick question. There is no ADA transition plan. No, this is the perfect way to do it because it underlined it to me for sure. Like, okay, there's not one, which seems egregious to me. They've had a couple years to get something together. Had a couple different mayors that have had an opportunity to get something together and have just chosen not to. So, yeah, any...
You know, to make it real easy to make something like that? An ADA coordinator.
And here's the thing, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are many examples of cities we can pull this from, and we can solve this yesterday. This should be an easy thing. But the problem I'm running into is I see that people want to do the least amount of work. They'll come up with a solution instead of something we should have solved in 30 years. They'll come up with a solution in the last 35 days and don't think past that because they've solved something and they feel great about it. But we know that's not true. When I went to the Charter Commission, they said they didn't do some things because it would have been hard work. And I want people to put in the hard work.
As everyone mentioned, I looked for this and didn't see it, and it seems like that's just increasing our city's liability, on top of just not being very good as a city and our responsibilities to communities that deserve services. It's opening us to liability because we're not making any motion to actually remediate the problems we have as a city. We need to be following the law, and we're not doing it. And I think we really need to address this.
I think too, if we don't have a process for grievances, like we had talked about before, like a lawsuit, etc., there should be an easier way to give grievances to the city and be like, hey, this is something that is not happening in my neighborhood or at this place, and to get real attention, not just, okay, we've heard you, we've received your email, come back in 2 to 10 years when we actually get to it. And I think too, making sure that when we're creating a plan like this, having a council of people that have lived experiences is going to be of the utmost importance, because what is really detrimental to a process is when we have people coming in and making policies, procedures, processes, and they have no idea, coming from someone without a lens that understands exactly what we need to be looking for and what we need to be putting in place.
You know, bringing people to the table is such an important thing to me, but more important than that is bringing the table to people, and we don't do that, and we need to do a better job doing this. And the other part I don't understand about this is a mathematical formula. Look at that. What is the cost of a lawsuit versus solving the problem in the first place? It doesn't make sense. When I was a city council member before, the number one thing was, how do we protect our citizens from lawsuits? Just do it. It's that simple. Fix it.
Anything else on this, guys? All right. Next question. What outreach have you done with the disabled community? How do you plan to continue this outreach?
I think what Eric just said was bringing the table to the people. I think for me, some of the most moving and powerful experiences I've had at people's doors. Dawn, I think I've been to see you twice. Other folks that I've been to see as well. Just hearing stories about what it means, what disability means to disabled people, and just the so many different flavors of disability that there are. Spent time with the Brain Injury Association of Michigan invited me out to a picnic. I spent about an hour and a half with those folks, and that's a completely different flavor of disability. For me, I think to continue this outreach, I go pretty much wherever I'm invited. I know sometimes people aren't comfortable inviting me, so I need to find ways to reach the disability community, especially folks that might not feel comfortable reaching out to me to invite me.
Yeah, it really spoke to me earlier when it was mentioned that there is a need for a centralized disability advocacy group here. I think that would be great. As Julie mentioned, knocking doors is where I get most of my stories and direct connections. I've heard all kinds of issues, particularly around the accessibility of our city. It's one of the foundational aspects of my belief in safe communities. Starts with not just preventing crime, but also making sure people can actually use their community. That means sidewalks, parks, it means the streets and everything. So that's really where a lot of my personal interactions happen, but on a professional level, I've worked with the Disability Network as well, primarily in making sure that domestic violence and sexual violence services are accessible to everyone, regardless of their disability. And I've had a lot of professional training in that aspect, but here on the local level, actually meeting people in their homes and in the streets is where I've had my most experiences.
One of the things I complain most about here in Lansing with people who want to solve stuff is we are siloed and we are in our separate areas and people don't want to work together. And I'll admit it, I've been siloed in this. I haven't been involved like I have been, and that's why it was so important to come here and to listen. And I ask you guys to please teach me what you need and have patience with me. And then I will be your voice for you. Trust me, I will not shut up, so.
I regret to inform you that a lot of folks don't have any patience left. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. That's very fair. It's very fair. So I was a teacher before I do what I do now, And I started in ASD classrooms and CI classrooms. It was my favorite place to be. It was often the most understaffed place to be. And it was some of the hardest work because school districts do not treat the ASD and the CI kids in the way that they treat gen ed. And you saw this across multiple districts because I worked in Grand Rapids, I worked in East Lansing, and I even worked at Eaton Rapids, okay? And each school is a little different, but it all comes back to the ableism part, right? This internalized ableism that is very, very rampant in our school system. And so very early on, I dedicated myself to going a step further, just to learn as much as I could about how to have an accessible and inclusive classroom. And what I found out, and to me it's funny because it should be common sense, but when you make your classroom accessible and inclusive, when you make the spaces you show up in accessible and inclusive from the get, and you don't have to come and hobble pieces together, everyone actually feels welcome. Everyone, even able-bodied people, right? They feel the love in the space that you curated, even if you didn't know who was going to step in. And that means accessibility is so wide and diverse, and there's so many things that we could be doing that are very simple. One, our city council meetings, we don't even have someone that does sign language. Why? Like, we don't have, there's not an accessible way to access things, and we saw that during COVID. COVID amplified a lot of things, and it showed us this massive gap we have, and we only filled it when people get mad and yell and protest, right? That's ridiculous. We should be having these conversations already, and it's not that hard to listen, and it's definitely not that hard to take those things that you learned behind closed doors and make the right choices, even if it's risky, even if it's going to frustrate business owners to have more accessibility and more things in their plan on building. Who gives a shit? You should have had that from the very beginning, because if you're not welcoming everyone, then what are we doing?
Next question. In what ways will you fight for the disabled community?
That's a great question. How do you all want me to fight? I mean, I'm here to serve your needs. I want to do what it is that you want me to do. From what I heard today, it sounds like a good start would be getting an ADA coordinator and making the city take this seriously. And that's something that I can help with whether or not I'm elected.
Well, I'm a professional advocate. That's what I do every day. When I started my current position in the nonprofit I work for, the first question they asked me is like, are you comfortable being the voice for the uncomfortable truth in the room? And I live that every day. And whether issue-wise, it's starting with the people experiencing the oppression of the system first and finding where those solutions come from them, and then finding a way to make it happen. I am fully able to fight with the city's attorney because I am an attorney, and that's what I like to do every day. So I'm going to make sure that every bit of reasoning they have is actually what the law says and not just some cop-out that they want to have. And that's really what I want to bring to city council, is not just rubber stamping everything because it's the easy thing to do.
It really is about doing the hard stuff. And again, I won't shut up about it. I don't have a problem taking on bullies. I don't have a problem. I sat in a room with 35 Proud Boys, and if I can do that, they're there to intimidate me. If I can do that, I can fight for you and do this, and that's what I will do.
So, one, I am a disabled person. I have chronic illnesses, right? It's gotten brought up in multiple online forums because people are fun. And I think it starts there, like being very loud about the fact that my disability doesn't inhibit me from doing a better job than the person that is in the office right now. And two, I mean, you took my words, right? What do you want me to do? Let me listen, let me learn, and and fight for you, right? Like, I want to go behind closed doors and be loud. I've always been the person that always, you know, pretty loud and makes people feel uncomfortable sometimes, but I think it's necessary. I operated that way in the school system. I went to the principal's office in Eaton Rapids the same amount of times that I did when I actually went there as a middle schooler. And there's a reason for that, because when things need to be changed, you can't be quiet about it. Also, I did write some things down because I think that when we're talking, I talked about like the ASL interpretation and making sure that public meetings are very open and accessible to folks. I think that when we do have an ADA, you know, coordinator, and we're putting in this transition plan and all of these things, that it should be very public facing. We need a dashboard to show exactly what we're doing, what our timeline is, if we met our metrics and our goals, and if we didn't, what is the plan to move forward with that? Because without accountability, we're just going to allow the same things to slip behind the scenes, because we don't have that public facing eyes on what we're doing. The fact that you go on Lansing website and you cannot find anything besides one page that says accessibility, where you can request things. I know personally that one more step could mean I'm just not going to show up. Just make it accessible from the get, period.
One thing I find very telling, I've always challenged all the candidates to show up, elected, non-elected. And if you notice, there are a bunch of us running, and there are a few people who are here, and the people who are already elected aren't showing up. And that upsets me. I know some people have said, well, I'm not elected, I can't do it. Yeah, they can, you can come here. You can listen to people.
Anything else? All right, next question. Can we count on you to advocate for disability-inclusive housing, especially as housing developments have started downtown? I know literally 2 blocks down the street, they're building 2 new townhomes, sets of townhomes. Are those handicap accessible? Do we know?
I don't have an answer to that question, but as far as my beliefs and my ability to fight about these housing accessibility, if they're getting any sort of support from us, we need to make sure that they're using it, and we have a housing stock that can actually be used by people. East Lansing's done it with their age requirements and accessibility in that regard, people making sure that there's space made for different communities. We could do the same sort of thing, especially if we're giving them tax breaks or supporting them in any way using our taxpayer money to make sure that they're bringing something here. We need more housing in general, but we need housing that fits the population that's here and the population that we want to come here.
And it's having teeth when they don't do what we ask them to do, pull that money back. We don't do that. We let this happen. And here's what I can tell you. They're going to do the bare minimum. That's what they're going to do at that. And we're not making them do anything. So we need to incentivize them. I can't say the word. But we need to look at ways we can get them to go, okay, you did the bare minimum, but let's go an extra step. Let's look at the parking you're required for this place. Instead of saying it's 1 parking spot per, let's make it 0.75. And if you do that, you can get more housing, but you can also do these things we need to have done. And so developers, who are a huge part of what we do here, can get this done. And the fear is, if we make the developers do this, they're not going to want to develop in here. I say BS on that. And I say, yes, we can make them do these things we need to do. You know, I love the sausage of politics, and I love when it comes time to go in that back room and bend someone's arm to make them do it. It's my favorite thing to do. So if you guys want to watch some fun, watch me do that. So.
I am the only one of the 4 at-large city council candidates who is not taking any money from corporate PACs or from developers. I'm not taking money from the Ides. I'm not taking money from the Gillespies. And that's very intentional. Developers have done a lot of good things for this city, but they have so many seats at the table already. They do not need another one. They need somebody who's not bought and paid for, so somebody can hold them accountable. I would love to see requirements for any new construction. If we're truly at less than 1% of our housing stock that is useful for somebody like you, Dawn, we need to make sure that that we fix that number. And I don't know what the number would be. Should we say everything that's built new should be handicap accessible? Why not? Exactly. Yep. Yep, exactly. And I think it, to the point that was made during the earlier forum as well, like, we don't know when we're going to be disabled. We don't know. And yeah, I think that I would love to look into that, what kind of standard we could set. Why not go for all of it? If you're going to build something new, you gotta make it so people can live there.
I mean, just echoing what y'all have said already, of one mind here. But I think too, what's important is to make a really good strategic plan that looks at long-term, right? Not only are we looking at new construction, but we also need to look at what's already developed, right? So you talked about next to the Ave, the bookstore, and just simple things like that, that maybe someone who's, I wouldn't think about that walking into that store every day. Right? That's why we need to sit down and listen to folks and have a council of people that can tell us, hey, this is a problem. I know that in my campaign I talked about participatory budgeting, right? So if we give the power to neighborhoods on how to spend some money, then we can figure out where the actual problems are and have them help us solve them, right? And so some of that comes directly from that. If you tell me that this needs to be more accessible, this is a place and a shop that I wish to go to, but it's hard for me to get there. Well, how can we fix that? What can be the long-term strategic plans, and making sure that when we have our grant writers writing grants, that we're putting them into every plan, right? So when we're putting in asks from the state, it's already baked in. We're not coming back to the table. I know that, like on Michigan Ave, we had a plan that was already made, and then we had a town hall meeting where we came together and we decided, well, this is what the people want, but then we couldn't even change the money because we would have lost it, right? And so it's like, well, that's a problem, because from the beginning, you should have already been asking those questions. You should have already been talking to your community on how to figure out what the best plan is, instead of assuming that what you know is best. Right? And that's why we keep getting stuck in this cycle. Relationship building is hard, but necessary work. We don't all have to agree to come to the table and figure out what's going to work for everyone and what a yes and solution can be, because it's definitely possible, and it just takes a little work, and that's okay. Everything good is worth the work.
Any other responses to that question? All right, last question. How will you advocate for disability inclusiveness housing solutions for the unhoused?
So I have the privilege of being out there all the time, going to encampments and seeing exactly, the struggle that we have. For example, for the Dietrich Park, we still don't have accessible toilets out there. One, we tried for at least a month contacting all local places. They didn't even want to put toilets out there to begin with. The fact that we have a public park with no toilets there to begin with is frustrating, but then the simple fact that the city stepped in and it was done in a week, but yet the one thing they forgot and couldn't get that wasn't a priority was the accessible toilet, right? That's a problem. I think that when we look at shelters, we have to understand that it's not going to work for everyone. Our shelters are not accessible. We do not have a place that if you have a caregiver, you can go and get a bed, because they will separate you. And that's ridiculous. And to say that people don't want help because the help that you're giving is not good enough. It's not on them, it's on you. It's on the system. We need to stop blaming people and saying and making up these stories to make ourselves feel better and to placate our own shortfalls. And we need to step up and actually do the hard work. And that also means holding people accountable that stand up and talk about our unhoused neighbors as if they are separate from us. Because they're not. We are all very, very interconnected. And it comes back to just listening. Listen to what people tell you that they need. They know better than you will ever know. And if you don't understand, too damn bad. You do it anyways. You try and find the support. We do not have enough services. We do not have enough housing stock. And there's definitely not enough support for our unhoused folks. So we need to be coming up with a very strategic and very aggressive plan to fill that gap. And it should be one of the first priorities that we have. Not more money for the Lansing Center, not more money for other places around town. I'll just keep talking.
Kelsey has said a lot that I agree with here. How can we advocate for disability inclusive housing solutions for our homeless, our unhoused neighbors? I think we can start with the city shouldn't be giving money to any shelter that can't include everybody, and that's disability. That's also religious indoctrination. Shelters that make somebody listen to a sermon for 45 minutes, if you want to have a place to lay your head, okay, but now we're going to just tell you for 45 minutes that you're going to go to hell. Great, that's somewhere that you would want to stay, I'm sure, right? And I underline this, what you said, Kelsey, that for people to sit there and say that these unhoused neighbors don't want to come inside, they don't want to come inside this place or this place, but I think if given the opportunity to come inside a place that felt welcoming and home-like to them, that most of them would probably want to do that. So I think, yeah, let's see what we can do as far as, can we prevent the city from giving money to shelters if they're not inclusive?
One thing I can say about this is we don't have a choice. There are people who want groups of people to go away and not exist anymore. And I can't be in a society that is like that. There is no choice but to do better, and it needs to start now. We are at a point in history that we have never been at before, and it should have been started before, but it needs to happen. And I will do whatever it takes to make it happen, because even as a citizen, even not as an elected official, because it's too darn important to not. I can't let my neighbors live that way, and I want everyone to be my neighbor.
Yeah, Julie stole some of my points I was going to have about this one. But as far as like, if we support an organization with our taxpayer dollars, we could put conditions on that money, because that's what we should do as a city. And there's a lot of good groups out there that aren't receiving the support of the city that could replace those who are not being accessible. And I think that's where we should find our solutions. I'm not in the trenches every day doing work directly with people, but I know a lot of people who are, and they can tell me how to fix it. And I'm going to listen to them first. And they're telling me a lot of things are not going how they should in what we have currently set up.
Do I got a second?
Yeah,
Okay. 1 second, okay. So another thing,
6 seconds.
okay, another thing too that I think that we often forget is that our mayor should be advocating for us on different levels of government. They should be loud, okay? They should be in rooms saying absolutely not, right? I'm gonna take up space here and you're gonna listen to me whether you like it or not, because I do have power and I'm going to use it in the best of my ability to bring about the change that I know my citizens need. We need someone that's a risk taker. We need someone that's willing to make those choices. And I just don't see it.
Wow, I hope you guys win. Thank you for being here today. Now we're going to open the floor for questions from anyone here that would like to ask either questions to our anyone from our disabled panel that's still here or to our candidates. I did really quickly just want to add some context that I forgot to do before. We invited everyone on the ballot to be on this panel. We didn't invite only 4 people. These are the 4 people that said yes, and we sent out that invite specifically to Andy Shore because Don wanted to give him some thoughts. We didn't tell him that months ago. And apparently he's very scared because he didn't even tell us himself he wouldn't be here. We got a response from a secretary, and then I went to a city council meeting and spoke to him directly and invited him to his space, and he still didn't give us a reason. So I think that's relevant. But moving right along, if you do have a question, just raise your hand and we will bring you the mic. Thank you so much.
Also, has anyone seen a small redheaded child? I was like, they said, okay, thank you. I was just like small, freak out a little bit happy. I don't know where my little tiny is.
I sold him.
Hey.
I don't know.
I'm just going to take
Did you take the whole damn thing?
We're taking the whole
have these headphones in while I do this. Too much feedback. Hello, I'm Tafiq. I've lived here since like 2001. My family immigrated to the United States from Germany. I'm a mixed boy, so there's a lot of context. But I frequent downtown Lansing a lot, and there is a new city hall being constructed right now with taxpayer money. I would love to see that go towards the disability community very much, and that's misappropriation of funds. I would love people that actually say that is taxpayer money being taken away from people that need it. And I would love to hear like what you guys have planned for that, because it has his name on it on that sign, very conspicuously that it is Andy Shore. So I figured it'd be a good segue point because we did mention him.
You want to go first? Go.
You can go. No,
I asked the same question because I was like, what's wrong with the one we have? And I think that it is important to be very loud and vocal about the things that are unnecessary. I mentioned things like the Lansing Center and some other things that we're asking for money for, or we're going out of our way to try and gather funds for and kind of using some of the budget to push that way when we have some really, really like sore emergency points that are actually needed for people to live in a way, just, I don't know, basic human decency, that we would just use the funds to help people instead of building something brand new that we don't need. And also, if I was mayor, I would not put my name on everything because it's not about me.
As the elected officials of the city, or what we would be, none of us are actually elected yet, but we would be tasked with the stewardship of taxpayer dollars, and not in the fiscal conservative way, but in the being a good municipality, a humanitarian municipality. And that city hall, is that what the people need, or is that what the politicians need? And I see it as the latter, and I don't think that's good stewardship. If politicians, the elected officials, have to suffer in a city hall that's quote unquote like below their standard, that's just a fraction of what people who are actually marginalized by the system experience on a daily basis. And I think that's okay to be a little uncomfortable when you're being a true servant to the people.
I'd like to see the city do a better job taking care of their shit. Like, you build this city hall, and they'll tell you the reason we need a new city hall is because they didn't maintain it properly. So why didn't you maintain it properly? So you could, you could give a sweetheart deal to a developer to build the next one. Yeah, I don't have much to add. It's they're gonna sell it, and somebody's gonna make it into a hotel. I don't know. So yeah, we would never be allowed to, if you own your own home, which I no longer do, I'm a renter, but if you own your own home, you can't just like let the whole thing go to shit and then tear it down and build a fresh one. Like that's not how the world works, is it? No.
If you think things are going great, then for the city charter system, you vote yes. If you love how it's going, but I don't. And if you want things to change, you have to vote no, because a city manager is going to manage the stuff while you have more people being involved in solutions. Right now, it's an office, mayor's office, making about $1 million that are coming up with everything we're looking at. If you're okay with that, that's the way you vote. But if you're not, and I don't care if you agree with me about the part you don't like, I have very specific parts I do not like, but here's the thing. If you vote yes for this, the next time we look at this is in 16 years, and I don't think I'll be here in 16 years. So this is a very important vote to go back. If you want things to change, this is the time to vote. And tell 6 people to go out there and vote for it too, vote no for it, because lives depend on it.
I think it's important too, like when we talk about an audit, when we're looking at all of the systems that are in place, we're looking at what already exists, is to looking at where maybe there's excess funds that we don't necessarily need. If there's positions that are just frequently open for whatever reason, do we really need to continue to allocate the money there, or can we put it somewhere else, right? I know that we give, and I think it's a really great thing, especially as a director of a nonprofit, that we give a lot of money to nonprofits. And also, if we continue to outsource the solutions, we will never be held accountable to provide actual services and support to the people in our community. And so, again, I love that we support our nonprofits and we do all this work, but also we need to remember that we are in service of the city and it's not the other way around. And so maybe we need to take a really deep look at how we're spending and why we're spending it that way. And then before a budget comes out, the one thing that drives me nuts, and I think about it from time to time, is the fact that we didn't even talk to the firefighters union before the first round of the budget came out. Like, why? Like, if you know that there's a need, why would you not go and talk to those people firsthand before you put the numbers on a piece of paper? It doesn't make, it's backwards. My brain is very systematic, and I think in totality, and I'm like, that makes no logical sense to me. It just doesn't. So making things easier for us, because I don't know about you, but I'd rather be preventative than reactive.
So, hi, I'm Darren. I've talked to at least 3 of you at some point. I worked in the media for 11 years around artists, and a large percentage of the people that I had the time to get to know during that period were people who were excluded from traditional employment, either because they were too disabled to work a normal job, or if they had a normal job, they were too exhausted by the end of their workday to be able to feed themselves or take care of themselves. So they worked in the arts as a self-employed artist in one capacity or another. And that included, for example, a guy I stayed with in Sacramento for about a week who was 70% paralyzed, but he had these custom-made braces on his arms where his previous experience in martial arts, he would just do this at the paper while staring directly at what he was drawing and would create these beautiful pieces. My question is, what would you as a city employee be doing to encourage and enhance the ability of people who are disabled to lead normal lives, like everybody who isn't prevented from being able to do so, to be able to also do so?
That's a great question. I think we could make a good first step by getting an ADA coordinator and actually trying to get the city compliant with the ADA. But I think also what I'm hearing is more personal, right? Like, how can we help an individual feel safe and empowered and help them realize the potential of what they can accomplish? And I think, again, that's going to come to the idea of the budget and city government, where that money gets allocated, what we spend that money on. And right now, I think we see what's happening federally. We see what's even happening with the state budget, that it's going to be difficult. It's going to have to be something that we can fund with money that we already have. I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the feds to help us coming up, especially with those types of programs. But there is money in that budget that we kind of don't even know where it goes. So people have mentioned these the positions that are funded that are not hired for, is it millions of dollars? There's $5 to $7 million that just kind of goes into some black box somewhere and we don't know what it's being used for. Yeah, so let's crack that open and do some good things with it.
So that money is there, and if it doesn't get spent, which I don't know if that's a bug or a feature, I suspect the idea is that when it's not spent, it goes into the general funds, and then mayor's office has some opportunity to do differently with that money. There's no reason to rotate that money in the general fund, just keep it there if that's what you want to do. And also, we have the ability to go ahead and take that money and invest it better. We can invest it at 4%. We're leaving, based on those numbers, we're leaving $150,000 on the table that can go towards good without doing anything different, without taxpayers paying more money. So there are some solutions that are right there if, again, they would do the hard work. But I can tell you this, if they're not going to come out here and listen to you, we're not going to solve that issue. And so we are here and we will solve this issue. Even as citizens, I know every single one of us would come out and do what we can. And sometimes I think more as a citizen, I know I can poke more bears and get them to do what I need them to do than sometimes in a position where you're elected. And boy, that's fun.
Talking about positions, one, I would want to talk to the people in those departments, because if people are doing 2 jobs for 1 pay, that's not okay. If our hiring process is not accessible or inclusive enough to get actually people in there, if that means that some of the qualifications have to be kind of chopped down, but there's more onboarding and front loading of training, then that's something that we have to do. I mean, there's so many opportunities for growth in that aspect, and all we have to do is, one, talk to the people in the departments that are missing those positions, and then really, if we don't need them, move the money and move it to a line item so that it doesn't just roll back over into the general fund, right? And another thing, something really simple that doesn't cost any money, is just like making sure we have plans, and I guess it could cost a little bit of money to prep it, but making sure we have plans for developers that are ready to go. This is exactly what we expect from you. We want to step up from ADA. We want to make it the best possible based on what our community needs, and that only happens in cooperation and conversation with our neighbors. And then coming up with a plan to be like, oh, you would like to build housing, here's what you need to do in order to do that. These are our guidelines and requirements, right? And I also think just making spaces, like when we have events for the city, it's super easy just to make sure that we start with accessibility and inclusion. And it gets a lot easier after you do it a few times, because then you know who to call, then you know what to do. You plan it, and it's just baked in from the beginning. It's that social part, because if we don't think about it on the front, that tells me what you think about disabled people. It's not worth the time and the planning it takes to make it just an expectation.
One thing I thought was very interesting about the encampment was that the city's argument was, hey, we're open to 8 to 4. Come and see us. And that was painful because maybe they misspoke, but when they said that a second time. And then the judge says, you're going to get people down here and provide services. Had to be forced to do that. But boy, that was cool the next time when people were showing up and asking me if I need services. They were out there doing that. But why was it so hard to have that happen? I don't get it. We're not even doing the least of stuff. And it frustrates me because we can do better. I know we can. We have done. We can. I want to come back in a year and celebrate the successes everyone's having. I look forward to that. I think everyone in life has some successes, and we need to focus on that and build on that. And that excites me. That gives me hope.
Any other questions? Whoa!
It's not really a question. Wait, is this on? Okay. It's not really a question. I just wanted to add, you guys earlier were talking about maybe taking funds and investing into shelters that had more inclusivity, and just reiterating that divestment really does work when you're trying to create the social change that we're talking about. So I love to hear that. That's cool.
All right, I've been asked all these questions I've been asking all day. Now I have one of my own. We have 2 empty hospitals in this town. What are the plans for those? Do we have plans for McLaren? What they plan on doing with these empty buildings? Are they going to refurbish them? Are they tearing them down, building homes? What are they doing with them? Do we have a foresight for that? It would help solve some of this unhoused population if we took the money that they earmark for these wonderful nonprofits that they're supporting. Don't get me started. And invest it in something that we can make so it's accessible to everyone. They're hospitals, for Christ's sakes. They are ADA compliant. Let's use them. Why tear it down? Why cost more money? Why put more things to a landfill? When we have the infrastructure, let's use it. What do you guys know of any plans? Is that something we should be working on? What?
You're raising a really good point, and I'm going to shift it a little bit away from your question, because I don't know specifically what they're going to do with those buildings. But for me, so I've lived in my home for maybe 14 months now. I rent here on the east side. The houses on either side of me have been completely empty for as long as I've lived in my house. They're in good condition. They're habitable, and no one lives in those houses. And I don't know why not. I would like to see, and this was something that worked in Pittsburgh, like a land value tax, where if you've got something sitting empty and it's not being used, let's fine the hell out of those people. Why are you sitting on something that, when we are in this housing crisis, when we are in this emergency, why are we leaving anything open when there are people that have literally nowhere to lay their heads?
Yeah, and in other municipalities in Michigan, I'm a big fan of these ideas as well, have had a lot of success with creating registries for vacant properties, both commercial and residential, just so we have an understanding of what we're sitting on as a city, and to make sure that we're addressing that properly. Incentivizing people to either fill those properties with either a business or a resident, or encouraging them to divest themselves of that property to make sure that someone else can. And I'm a big fan of that. And it's about good stewardship of our assets in the city, because there should not be this many vacant properties around when there's so many people in need.
Well, because we don't have transparency in this city, what I can tell you what I think the plan is, first of all, don't hurt the developers' feelings, right?
Fuck those developers.
Exactly. And then the second plan is to wait till it's been long enough and we give them a tax break that gives us, please just build. No. We need to go ahead and, whether it's community benefit agreements that say this is what you're going to do, and to get this back. If you're going to build this property over here, you're going to go ahead and work on these red tag properties as well. Your plumbers finish up doing that big high rise, send them over and get 5 houses done. Build a public park, whatever it takes to do. But the plan is to let the developers do what they want to do, and for some silly reason, we think no one will want to develop here. I can tell you again, yes, they will. But right now, they don't want to develop unless they're going to be pushed. So we need to push them. And maybe some won't. Oh darn. But let's push them and get what they need to do, because Michigan is really big on the developers, and Lansing's really big on developers, and let's hold them accountable. It's an easy solution. Hey, this is what you're going to do. If you don't like it, don't develop here.
No, instead they build apartments like they did on the River Trail, where the old city market used to be. They're uglier than hell and cost $1,200 a month that nobody can afford.
Because we do not hold them accountable. We need to go ahead and hold them accountable and say, hey, no, you can't do this.
I think there's a few things, and I've talked about this previously. One, having an accountability dashboard that's very visible to folks, that highlights landlords that are partaking in practices that are harmful to our community, right? So when we looked at the red tag issue that we have here, if we know exactly who is a contributor to that is a landlord and not an individual person that may have gotten behind on fixing, may need a little bit more assistance, right? And put the emphasis on, if you have the capital and the resources to do it, then you need to do it, right? We're going to put you in a spotlight. understanding and talking with folks about what will happen, who owns that building, is there plans, being public about that, especially because I know Child and Family Charities is in the old hospital over there and has like a nonprofit hub, which is really beautiful, right? Having one place where folks can come and get a myriad of different services and continuing that kind of community involvement perspective. I know the old Malcolm X school is going to be a community hub of like business resources and just a really beautiful way to involve the community in development. And I think that, yes, we do have developers here that do what you were talking about, but we also have a lot of people that would love to have that seat. They would love the opportunity, the funding, and the support to be able to make choices and put capital behind things that actually benefit our community. We really should be prioritizing giving opportunity to that. Whether that means pressuring the state to give us more funding to help local entrepreneurs, whether that, it could look like just community benefit agreements, right? Like we could have a housing trust fund that comes directly from money from new developments. But instead we just, do abatements and tax incentives and all of these things, which is great, but we could also be doing more. It doesn't have to be totally focused on just building capital.
I'll piggyback just a little bit on that too. This idea that we hold all landlords to the same standard, I would like to see us treat. Let's make it nice for people that want to own the house next door to them. Let's make it better for people that want to own a house around the corner. We should be incentivizing local folks to make their own neighborhoods stronger rather than letting people from outside of the state, outside of the country buy some of these houses up and then run them, through companies that are not responsive to their tenants' needs.
Here's what I can tell you about developers and the Chamber of Commerce, the regional Chamber of Commerce, because it's not a local Chamber of Commerce, it's regional, and that's their job, is to protect those groups outside. A lot of developers in that group, and they donate to the PAC fund, and that PAC fund has chosen people that they would like to see work with the mayor. The mayor has endorsed people. They have endorsed each other on that, just kind of how that works. And so obviously they're going to vote with the mayor. None of us here have been endorsed by that. And you can hear what we're arguing about, and they don't want that. It's that simple. They will push back, and you know what? They think it's funny. When you push them on it, they think it's funny. Head of the Chamber of Commerce thought the complaints about things were a nothing burger. Another one did a laugh react on things because they don't find you guys important. And none of the people on that team Lansing are here. I got pissed off. Sorry about that.
Okay. This is more of a procedural thing, but one of the things I've noticed as a resident of Lansing for like 40 years is that a lot of the policies and procedures, a lot of the ordinances that are passed disproportionately harm disabled people. One of the things that I've often periodically have issues with, code compliance. They're quick to go after individual homeowners, people like me, who, for not mowing our lawn enough, not getting our sidewalk shoveled. It's like, the only access to my front door is a ramp. That should be a clue that I'm not out there doing yard work, right? But yet, I will get, the nice little letters from the city in code compliance inviting me to fix my shit, which I understand that. I wish it was done on a more regular scale. The thing I object to is that when I don't know how many people know this, when they send you one of those little letters, the first one's a freebie. The second one They can charge you a $75 fee. You can't appeal it. It goes directly to your property tax. The next one's $150. The next one's $225. And for years, they never assessed that to me. A couple of years ago, that changed, and all of a sudden, I started getting dinged, and I talked to them. And they were like, we don't care. That's the ordinance. I understand that that was council's idea of a way to go after slumlords. They don't care. They don't pay it, and they don't fix their stuff. It affects people like me because we do try and take responsibility, but the resources aren't out there. So like 1 year, I had $225 in fines assessed to my property tax because I didn't mow my lawn enough. And that's an issue. And you can go on like Nextdoor anytime, and in the summer, you'll start seeing like a lot of senior citizens really frightened of losing their housing because they're getting assessed these fines. People afraid of losing their housing because they're getting these fines for not shoveling. So there needs to, and you can't appeal this stuff, it's just put on your property tax. I really think there needs to be a way, like a way to waive that, and also there need to be more programs to help people with things like the maintenance of their homes and shoveling snow, mowing the lawn, so that this thing doesn't happen.
Dawn, that is something I have heard from so many different folks when I'm out knocking doors, especially, some of our senior neighbors who their home might even be paid off. They're not on any kind, they're not working, so they're on whatever income source that they've got that they're dealing with, and they can't afford to make a repair. They can't afford to hire somebody to mow the grass. So what does the city do? They fine them on top of what they already can't afford. I would love to see the city make that freebie. How come that freebie isn't, hey, we noticed that you need help. Let us connect you to this list of people who are able to help you. And that could be businesses, that could be also volunteers that are set up to do lawn care, that are set up to do snow removal, that are set up to do whatever it is that you need. The city's in a unique position where they can identify folks that are struggling and help them connect to those resources that are already there. Why are we finding somebody that can't afford what it was that we're finding them for in the first place? That's ridiculous.
You're getting the lawyer in me really riled up, especially about due process and unappealability of certain fines and fees. That's a taking is what that is. That violates the Constitution. If you're charging someone money and taking money from them without them having the right to address that grievance, that really bothers me. But a lot of those ordinances need to be looked at anyways, especially the lawn mowing one. We have ecological knowledge now that allows for alternative styles of yards that are better for our community, and we should address that. Go after slumlords, yeah, I'm fine, but again, that's executive discretion. When enforcing these code enforcement going around, they don't fine every single person that they see is in violation. They choose. That's because they're a part of the executive power of the city, and everyone they choose to fine is a choice, and they could choose not to as easily as they choose to do something. As long as it's not discrimination, and that's not you're never going to prove that anyways, as far as that goes. But no, I'm really riled up about that as well. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think some investigation from City Council, my favorite power that is in the charter for City Council, draw some people in and ask why they're making the decisions they are and why these fines are being assessed as they are. People need, if we are already having issues with people not being able to stay in their homes, why are we making it worse? And that's just another thing that we're choosing to do as a city that we don't have to do.
We haven't looked at any of these ordinances in years. We were just at a meeting where they were talking about sound, and one of the things they were worried about making sound was phonographs, right? Wasn't that what it was? So trying to get these things updated, but they haven't been looked at in all these years, and we need to take a comprehensive look at these things. And trying to get someone to cut your lawn is next to impossible. They don't show up. I know I can't cut my lawn anymore, and getting someone to show up is a challenge. I can't pay a service to do it. I don't have that kind of money. This is a real thing that we need to look at and how we can solve it. And we can choose to not do it, or we can choose to be a community and get it solved. I kind of like the community idea.
Of one mind, once again. I think that everything that's been said is pretty great. I love the ecology point, because if we have someone that can't get out and cut their lawn all the time, then we should probably have a group of people that can come out with some native seeds and plant them in the front, and then you not get fined for that, and then the bees are happier, nature is happier, right? And making sure that when that does happen, because I know I have a neighbor who has some beautiful milkweed that's gotten mowed down or threatened to be mowed down because of it's unsightly, right? And they got fined. But also these ordinances that we're looking at and that we're putting forth, it's okay to come back to the table and be like, this actually didn't work the way that we thought it would. And we know that now, and our intent didn't match the impact, so now we have to come back to the table and figure out what things we need to move, what language needs to be put in, what considerations need to be put in to fix that. And it's okay to say that we tried and we failed, we're just gonna come back to the table and we're gonna have another run at it. We can't be scared to do that. Failure is the surefire way for growth, right? And again, it's a theme. Just listen to your neighbors. If people are telling you that this isn't working, listen to them.
Yeah. I'm guided by my ancestors talking of being just in good relation with each other. We're all relatives. And as a city, we owe that to each other. On top of just neighbors helping each other, the city is the collective power of all of us, and we need to be using that for good for all of us. And using it to be punitive is just so bothersome to me in situations where people just need assistance.
I just wanted to respond to your response of having more eco-friendly lawns. I have an eco-friendly lawn. It's full of native plants. It looks like garbage, according to the city. I get fined all the time, or they try to fine me all the time, but I know how to advocate for myself, and I got nothing but time. So the solution of eco-friendly lawns is a great one in theory, but you would have to change the rules.
That's what I was directly advocating for, is changing the rule, altogether, yeah.
It's not even a question, it's just another comment. I think I keep hearing the question of why, we need to see why this is happening, and ultimately it's all boiling down to the extrapolations of colonialism, and really sitting with that and being rooted in that with every part of your investigative process with this is intrinsic to this, to be what we want it to be versus just another placated, situation. There you go.
I think everyone is going to agree with this. This is I like history. My dad's German, so we have a lot of history of this, but what the state does with the power that it has been given by the people that it's supposed to represent is a choice, and we have the data to know who needs support in the city. If you are putting accessible anything anywhere, you are making a modification to the house that I think is documented, right? The state would have to know. How do you not know that a person has something that needs a ramp or something like that, but you're fining them because they can't do their lawn work? Yeah. That doesn't make sense, but it is what the state does.
Welcome to late stage capitalism.
I wasn't gonna put it that way, but
yeah, that would involve systems talking to each other, and there's too many egos in the room to actually allow that to happen most of the time. It's lacking the will to do the hard work, which we keep circling back to. But being in community is hard work, and we should love it. And that's what I think everyone up here is about. So I'm gonna leave it to that.
To me, it sounds like, I know that, there's a lot of effort that goes in with communicating, but also people are busy. They have jobs that they're working. And so what tools do we need to connect people better? What policies, procedures, whatever, the way in which the city operates functionally, what tool can we implement? We're in an age where tech is booming. We can find a solution that simplifies things without giving someone 40 more hours of work in their month. Right? So there are solutions, and maybe that does cost money, but the upfront money is going to save us so much time and money in the long run. And so finding those, we talked about the audit, that's what happens when you go in. I'm not just talking about a budgetary audit, but going into these departments and actually talking to the people that work there to figure out exactly how everything is functioning. Because as a leader, and I operated this way in the restaurant, I operated this way in my classroom, and I operate this way now, if I don't know what everyone is doing in their job, or at least have a base understanding, I don't have to be an expert because I have them for that, right? But I still need to understand fundamentally how things operate and how people are feeling in those spaces. And so I think that's going to be huge and a huge imperative, and it shows kind of how leadership functions, because if we're not having that communication and we have shortfalls, that's not on the people that work there, that's on the people that are leading the people that work there.
One of the first things I did when I got involved was looking at how many code enforcers and how many code inspectors we had, and I went and talked to them. And they were very shorthanded, and I said, how many do you need? They said 10. I said, no, you mean 15, right? Because you need more. They finally brought a couple on, but they're enforcers who are going to go and say, hey, if we had more inspectors, which I will go down and talk until I'm blue in the face, that would help, because we can go out there and go, yes, this is what they need to do. I went down, when they hired those three, I went down to the code enforcement office and I celebrated with them, because now they don't have an electrical guy right now. He's retired, sorry, and he's working overtime right now. They have one guy. I keep saying, hey, Andy, how are you going to put up 600, units in here if you don't have the electrical guys? How's that going to happen? There's no answer for that. There's no solution on that. I am dumbfounded that one of the things they want to do this year is a strategic plan. We don't have a strategic plan? How can that be? Don't try to placate me saying this. It should have been a given, but it hasn't been.
All right. Well, that concludes our event. I want to thank everyone who came. I want to especially thank our panelists for being so generous with your time and your vulnerability. I think we heard some possible solutions, but I think we mostly have just heard how many failings we have. And I hope what we can take from this is that there's a lot more that needs to happen. And that maybe we can connect with everyone in this room, with each other, because you don't come to an event like this if you don't care about disability. I also want to emphasize that we do have free zines that have interviews from some of our panelists. It also has information about different community orgs, so if you're trying to get involved in this work, that could be a good opening. And that we do still have Dawn's GoFundMe is open for funds going towards future renovations to her home to make it even more accessible. That's that neon page right there if you'd like to donate. And also, thank you for the Fledge for letting us use this space for free. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for organizing this, too. Thank you.
Thanks. Ooh.